You know, there's one person in Australian politics who is fair dinkum fearless. And the reason? Because he's seen the inside and he fights for normal people like you watching right now. I truly say that he is fearless. I'm one of the very few in the country who can say I voted for him when he was on the way to the Prime Ministership, and I voted for him to stay in the upper house in New South Wales. I look forward to the chance to do so again at the March election in New South Wales. Mark Latham, welcome back to the Man Cave.
Well, thank you, Paul. You're part of the pick and stick club.
This is it.
Voting for me, I appreciate that. And for my 500th election, I'm up again on the 25th of March.
And why are we both wearing green?
Well, that's just accidental. Let's say it's...
red rag to a bull.
It's not really green, is it? It's off green.
Yeah, I was going to say, it's definitely not teal.
The greens are off, so we're off green.
So polling today suggests there is going to be a change of government in New South Wales. We know that there's a lot of people that are there that don't want to vote for the Labor Party, clearly want to walk away from the Liberal Party. Do you believe you're going to have a better showing this time than last time?
Well, I hope people who've got political views that are mainstream, traditional, conservative, based on freedom and the greatness of our nation would think that One Nation in New South Wales is good value for their vote, because we've fought for all those things. And what we're doing, unlike Chris Minns and Dominic Perrottet, is trying to address the really big problems facing the state. Perrottet and Minns are around with little micro announcements, you know, traffic fines and signs, yeah, important enough, but the really big issues are twofold. How do we keep the lights on in New South Wales and electricity prices down, given the wreckage Matt Keane has caused in the electricity grid and energy policy? And the other big one, of course, New South Wales has had the fastest falling school academic results in the world, not just our state, in the world, over the past 20 years. How do you turn that around? So they're the big things, the big solutions that are needed that Perrottet and Minns will avoid. So I think you get a lot of value for your One Nation vote in New South Wales. We'll fight, you know, we won't compromise. There'll be no surrender, no woke white flag being waved like most of these Liberals and Nats these days. So hopefully we can get a bit of support.
About education, Productivity Commission report which came out, which told us what you've been saying the whole way through, what everyone watching knows instinctively. Money didn't help. Extra money was almost impossible to follow. The accountability wasn't there. Yet the teachers' union have turned around and demanded more money to make things easier for them. We've gone down that path, we've got the evidence, and it doesn't work.
Well, it's been wasted, the Gonski funding. I've been to disadvantaged schools where they say we just can't spend all this money. There's an avalanche of Gonski rivers of gold, and the schools say we're struggling to find ways to spend it. So it's a furphy, it's a myth to say that these schools are underfunded. The real action and why we've had these fast falling results, why next week when high schools come back we'll have 17,000 New South Wales students going into high school for the first time who can't read and write to an acceptable standard. The reasons that's happened is twofold. We've been teaching the wrong stuff the wrong way in schools for too long. Take phonics, for example. It's the best way for literacy. But in New South Wales, 43% of students in year one, so 6-year-olds, fail the basic phonics check. And whole word, this leftist failed technique in literacy, has been too prevalent. So teach phonics and phonics alone and teach it well, and literacy will improve. We know that from the international experience. And the other thing is that teachers have got to get back to teaching, direct instruction. Have a rich interchange of ideas, instruct the students on what they need to know, instead of the modern woke fad of teachers being facilitators, walking around with a cup of coffee while the kids look it all up on the internet. I look at that and I think, well, why do you need schools? If they can just sit at home and look it up on the internet in their little groups at the table, teachers must teach. And when I go to a school where the teacher's at the front instructing, getting that energy and the answers and the exchange of views from the students in the classroom, you know, this is a high achieving school. When you see them walking around as facilitators, you know they're buggered.
What about Albo yesterday with Alice Springs? Classic media management, right? Which is, and I'm sure the narrative on Media Watch will be that it was a Sky News fever dream that this was a problem, but he decided to spend more time flying there and back than on the ground. They moved the press conference from outside to inside. There was reports about things being cleaned up before he gets there. He announces a review that'll only go for about a week. And surprise, surprise, the stories start to drop away 24 hours later to be replaced with the Australian of the Year announced tonight, the public holiday. This is a microcosm of everything we've got wrong. Everything we've got wrong for decades in this area.
Yeah, and how we've ignored the person who's had it right in terms of analysis and solutions, Jacinta Price.
Bloody oath.
Paul, it should be, it's coming into Australia Day, it should be a great moment of Australian national pride and significance that an Indigenous woman has emerged as a genuine national leader. She forecast, sadly, that if you take the alcohol bans off, these are the problems of lawlessness, break-ins, kids just doing everything wrong, and people being terrorised in their own facilities. So she knew it. She's the voice. You want a voice. She's the voice that should have been listened to in the first instance and has got the solutions now. And the other factor here, of course, why are these kids out on the street? In many instances, it's not safe to be in the home for the most horrific of reasons, and that's got to be fixed up as well. So the answers are there, but it's not a fly-in, fly-out job. It's a listen to Jacinta Price job, and that's what every government leader should be doing.
And I blew my top earlier in the show about Linda Burney. Linda Burney says that if the voice was in place, Alice Springs wouldn't be as bad as it is right now. This is pretending that last month, the month before that, 6 months before that, people weren't screaming from the rooftops that there was a problem. I mean, is there no one monitoring the media? Literally there is a member for Lingiari that has been the Labor Party for as long as anyone can remember. Are we supposed to honestly believe that Linda Burney, unless she's told by the voice, won't take any notice of anyone but the voice? Because that was ridiculous.
Well, why does Linda take the ministerial salary and all the lurks and perks if she, as minister, hasn't got some solutions for what's happening in Alice Springs? She's an Indigenous woman, intelligence person, been in politics and Indigenous affairs for a long, long while. Why, if she's incapable of getting these answers, why would her mates in the voice be any more capable in finding solutions?
Correct.
That's the paradox, isn't it?
We all know what Australia Day means, why we want to retain it, why we want to have a national day. But again, I mentioned at the start of the show that, as Keating said, when you change the government, you change the country, and today, stroke of a pen, basically the entire federal bureaucracy now is going to be able to take it off, the woke corporations, all the rest of it here. Are we still doing Australia Day in 5 years, or will they by then have got a republic and moved it to July the 1st, 2026?
Well, we are in the suburbs and regions where nationalism is not a dirty word. Yeah. Nationalism is a source of pride. We know this is the best country in the world. There's many millions of people who'd love to move here. So in the suburbs and regions, Australians love Australia Day because, I've been around the block a few times. I've never heard a single person associated anything to do with the 26th of January who says, we're rubbing into the Indigenous here, that somehow there's a celebration of Indigenous pain. It's a celebration of all the very best things about our country that came here on the 26th of January 1788. The technology that makes this show possible, our material comforts, medicine, science, education, the list goes on, the arts, literature, communications, all the great things that, and of course the lefties would be the first to complain. Lydia Thorpe would lose motorcycles and motorcycle gangs. All these things are only possible because of the First Fleet. They came here, and we celebrate the very best of Western civilisation that's part of the Australian achievement. To turn a penal colony into a thriving nation and society is an historic achievement, and we should be proud about that while also recognising some of the mistakes that were made in Australian history. But the idea that a young person in Alice Springs, off the rails, engaged in lawlessness, somehow it's the fault of Captain Cook and Arthur Phillip, is such a fantasy and a myth as to be disrespectful to the sort of problems the Indigenous have today, and it's no solution.
Bloody oath. Mark Latham, good bloke, and he'll be with us every single week between now and the state election campaign.